Old Black Live segment 3. Kyle Charters comes in fresh off the road to women's basketball, and
big game this weekend.
Big game for a team that 12-6 overall, 3-1 in Big Ten play, but the competition level is going to step up here in a hurry.
Yeah, they're 12-6, but if you're looking at it from an NCAA tournament perspective, their resume is not good.
Yeah.
10 of those 12 wins are against RPI 100 plus. I think 6 of those 10 are against teams that are 220 or worse. So not a lot of quality wins there, and they have, depending on how you look at it, 3 or 4 bad losses. So making up for that this weekend against Ohio State would go a long way, but the Buckeyes are pretty good.
Yeah, though Buckeyes lost to Michigan State this past week.
Tuesday or Wednesday.
And yet Purdue will have some chances with Maryland also being ranked the top 5. That if you could pull some major.
Got to play well.
Yeah. What's been the key in your view in terms of what this program's got to do in terms of what does it have to do to be able to compete with the likes of Ohio State?
Well, are you talking in this particular game? Or are you talking from a program point of view?
In this particular game?
In this particular game, I think a lot of people look at it in terms of you've got to try to slow Ohio State down. I think that's true to some extent. More so, though, you just have to outscore them. They don't play defense, really. They don't even really try to play defense. They're just trying to outscore you. They give up, I think, 82 points per game. Michigan State beat them earlier in the week by scoring in the 90s. So, if you can try and outscore them, now that's not Purdue's strength either necessarily. They're only averaging in the mid-60s. But Ohio State doesn't play defense. So you up the scoring a little bit and you get a couple of stops and maybe you can compete. But Ohio State's really good. They start 5 players who can all score. Of course, Kelsey Mitchell, who can really score. She's really good. I don't know how many points she scored in her career. It's got to be up to 2,500 at this point, if not more than that. So it'll be a challenge.
Yeah.
We'll see. Purdue's playing okay, but they, as we said, haven't really, the teams they've beaten. They beat Michigan State, which was a good win. They didn't have Susie Merchant in that game, which, how much does the head coach matter? Some, I think. I just think the week was a little bit weird for the Spartans coming in because, she had fainted in their game just a few days earlier and spent the night in the hospital. So, but credit to Purdue. They got the win, played well. But after that, they, Michigan State's RPI is 32. Central Michigan's is 104. It's basically your 2 best wins there.
You're going to have to get some more if you're going to be around on selection Tuesday, Monday, right, for women's basketball. Okay, it has been since the 20th or 19th or whatever day it was in December when our last show when Jeff Brohm was on. Purdue's obviously, Stacy's taken some steps to hiring assistant coaches well in that process. We don't know positions for many of them.
We have good guesses.
And we also don't know all of them.
Right. Tell us where we are.
As far as we know, 2 spots still open, potentially a running backs coach and then a spot as a defensive assistant coach. However, they would decide to work that out. They did announce today that Chris Barclay is coming on as an offensive quality control coach, which means he's not the running backs coach, which is what he was under Jeff Brohm at Western Kentucky. So potentially that could mean Jarrod Parker is staying here and will be the running backs coach. We don't know that officially yet, but we do know Jarrod's over there working, so he's doing something. So potentially that could happen and he could stay in a new role. That will be his 3rd position group. He's coached at Purdue, coming here as tight ends coach and then receivers coach. And obviously a lot of the receivers graduated, but there's still a handful of guys left that he coached, so a little bit different, moving on to potentially to another one. And then there could be, which, do we talk about what we have in boiling over on this show?
Sure.
I don't know if we do.
Absolutely.
There's potentially a defensive staff hiring imminent.
Right.
I just
Just
don't
say
know.
whatever.
I don't know how much.
Yeah. We
So-
don't know the whole, exactly what's happening, but you're talking
what you wanna
about.
say.
Say what you want to say.
So Minnesota's defensive coordinator, Sawville,
Jay
yeah,
Sawville, right?
potentially could be coming here as a defensive assistant, minimally a defensive assistant. He had 1 year coordinator experience at Minnesota before that he was like cornerbacks coach, defensive backs coach. And if that would happen, if he's the guy who rounds out that staff potentially on the defensive side, you could have 3 guys with defensive coordinator experience on one staff.
Reggie Johnson also was a coordinator.
Was he really?
At Alabama A&M.
So there you go. So that would be kind of crazy. With Anthony Poindexter, obviously, as well. Connecticut was there the last 3 years as defensive coordinator as well as coaching. The defensive backs, he was an All-American safety when he was at Virginia. You would think then you would want him to continue to coach at least safeties. You could break apart, maybe if Sawvell comes, then he can coach the other half of that potentially. And then Nick Holt was the defensive coordinator at Western Kentucky, and he is here now, probably coaching linebackers and then whatever else. But it is interesting, I'm sorry, Cal, that Greg Brohm says, we just have everybody do the game plan. So, I think generally speaking, we kind of assume there's less emphasis on a coordinator, at least offensively, under Jeff Brohm, because he had everybody was a coordinator in title.
And he's a coordinator.
He's the play caller.
Yeah.
So I think maybe that could be the case is, hey, everybody's a co-coordinator or a passing game coordinator or run game coordinator or whatever they would be equivalent to on defense.
Mm-hmm.
And it isn't maybe as important to be a coordinator in this kind of umbrella.
It seems like there's some coordination. You look at the offensive staff, there's so many, co-coordinators, passing game coordinators.
Yeah.
He calls plays. So it wouldn't surprise me if they do that a little bit from a defensive point of view. You have to coach positions. But some collaboration. I was going to say, for a guy Jeff Brohm, who is an offensive-minded head football coach, that's a pretty good, if that's the defensive staff, it's a pretty good defensive football staff that Purdue has put together. Guys who have had a lot of success where they have been previously. Now, all-star staffs don't always turn out to be what you want them to be, but some of these guys have worked together before, and just on paper, it looks like they have good credentials that they're bringing with them.
And I think one thing that's key too is you get the impression just being around, and maybe I'm a little bit just because it's having sat next to Greg Brohm here, but they do get the sense that this is the proverbial family/team effort. So all-star are guys from different places. There are going to be some guys obviously from the same place too, and there's a good blend of that may give them a chance. Everybody at Purdue talks about, Joe Tiller back in 96, 97 brought his whole staff with him and all this and that, but it's clear that staffs need to be directed well by their head coach and be able to work as a unit, and it appears, at least from a workability standpoint, that this group may have a running start. We'll see.
There seems to be some common traits among their personalities, I think.
I agree.
We haven't had a chance to meet the coaches, the new assistants one-on-one yet. We've met Greg Brohm here a little bit, not a coach, but, part of the staff. And we'll get a chance to meet some of the others, but in talking to some former players, I think a lot of them have described them a little bit as players, coaches. Coaches who treat their players with a certain level of maturity, expectation level. We're going to treat you this way, and in response, we want you to follow the rules and do what you're supposed to do. And so I think if you look at it from that perspective, that even if the guys come from some different places, they do share, it seems, some commonality in personality. We'll see when we get to know them a little bit better, but there seems to be that.
And one guy that we know well is Jarrod Parker, obviously, and it's been interesting to kind of watch to see how this is going to all come to pass. And I'll speak for myself. I was one, as much as I like Jarrod Parker as a person, I really would have been a little bit surprised that they were going to bring him in just based on the fact he was on old staff. But from a personality standpoint, he seems to fit well. And obviously, we know that Jarrod did do some really good things in his 6 weeks as head coach, just in his ability to get guys to buy in a little bit. Your thoughts on that? I'll start with you, Kyle.
I agree with you a little bit. If it does turn out that he is on the staff, I'm surprised at that a little bit from both perspectives, I guess.
Yeah.
If I was Jarrod, maybe I'd look for a little bit of a break. Things haven't worked out at Purdue the way you wanted them with the old staff, certainly. It was a challenge, I think, for him to be the interim head coach. I think he handled that as well as he possibly could. I think a lot of people like and respect the way he did handle that. I think from Purdue's perspective, because he gained such respect, maybe I don't want to say you don't want him here, but you just, the challenges that potentially arise because of that, especially in what will be a difficult 2017 season, I think, that maybe you want to be able to bring in your own guys. And that's no disrespect to Jarrod Parker, I don't think. It's just a reality of the situation. So, surprised, but he's a good coach, too.
Yeah.
And,
And seems to be a good personality.
And seems to be a good fit. Good personality, family guy, seems to fit the mold for what Brohm wants, sort of that, what I talked about a couple of minutes ago. So from that perspective, I think it does fit. We'll see. I don't know. I don't know. I mean, he's a good coach, so it's hard to say it's not going to work. You're going to say it's not going to work.
No, I'm not going to say that. I like him. All of the things that you guys said, I agree, in terms of his personality and those kind of things. I just am not so sure it's done. Say, for example, Tim Lester gets the head coach job at Western Michigan, which he has, according to what I read in like the Detroit Free Press or whatever it was, he has been interviewed for and was considered a candidate for before they hired PJ Fleck. I mean, he is one of the best, if not the best quarterback they've ever had there. And so I think that would be a good hire. I mean, he has a great personality. I mean, I think he's a good coach. And possibly him and Jarrod Parker bonded over the last year and were in meetings together, and he thought, dang, Jarrod Parker might be an offensive coordinator. And then Lester gets a job, says, hey, Jarrod, you want to come be offensive coordinator? He's gone. I mean, you have to take that next step if you're Jarrod Parker. So, I mean, I think certainly there is a possibility that Jarrod Parker is here for the season as a coach. But there, I think, still is a possibility he's not, too. And I think that might be why we have yet to hear anything officially. Again, like I said earlier, I think this Barclay thing signals that that's possibly what's happening only because they gave Barclay a title, which Greg Brohm is sitting here without a title, and we all know he's going to be the director of operations. I mean, I know I was kind of joking with him, but he is. That's what he's done. That's who he's going to be. So I just find it interesting that now you say, oh, yeah, Barclay's a quality control guy, instead of just saying, we hired Chris Barclay. We'll figure it out. So it's interesting how there's
and it is a little bit of the we'll figure it out mentality too. I mean, in terms of how these guys are all going to be placed and what will all come to the fore.
And there is potential for a 10th full-time on-field assistant to be added by the spring. I was trying to read up more on that today. I can't exactly figure out when that final vote would come, but I mean, it was pretty much unanimous.
April, right?
It was pretty much unanimous by the head coaches, or by the coaches association, and then it'll go to the NCAA tournament, NCAA convention this next week, and then the oversight committee will be able to say yes. And then I think there's still one more step in that process, but potentially by the time spring comes, you have another coach anyway. So if Jarrod Parker, maybe Chris Barclay becomes something. I don't know why you need. I'm sorry, you really need 10 assistant coaches. You can't even divide it up by what they are now.
Alabama's got 27.
No, they have like not like
I
real
know, but
coaches.
consultants,
I'm talking
but,
like on the field coaches. Like already we're like, how are you going to divide up the defense? Okay, maybe you have a defensive, like cornerback and then a safety, or you could split the ends and the interior guys. But on offense, I'm just like, you split up the linemen. I mean, that's just kind of dumb. I think.
Apparently, Alabama needed 28 coaches.
Apparently,
I thought it was 30 total.
Whatever,
with all the quality control guys.
They needed a coach for the last 1 second of a football game. That's what they needed.
And that comment brings us to the end of our show. So there's going to be a lot more to discuss, certainly, as this all comes to pass here, not only the coaching staff, but the start of spring ball, the end of recruiting, which will be a busy 3 weeks, not only on the site, but just seeing where this class how it will come together. And that will be a storyline here from now until February 1st. Next week, we do plan to have Gene Cady on as our guest for one of the segments at least, and we're still working on other guests as well. We plan to have the show at 2 p.m. That could change slightly, but just stay tuned to the site, and we'll try our best to let you know. We want to thank our sponsors, Hilton Garden Inn, Triple X, and Kyle's trying to move his head just so the State Farm. They're beautiful. You did a good job, and then you can move to the right for Hilton Garden Inn there.
All right, you're right.
I guess it'd be my right.
You can see yourself.
We want to thank our
which
sponsors
right? Well,
for
the one
everything.
you move and it looks like it's there.
We also want to thank Cammie Bowerman and also Gordon Jackson and everybody and Allie as well, everybody at WL5 for all their help with the show. we will be back next week at some time, probably 2 o'clock, for Gold and Black Live. Have a great week, everybody, and we'll stay warm and stay out of that weather, whatever we're supposed to get here this weekend. See you another week, Gold and Black Live.